My name is Pastor Hal York, and welcome to Truth in the Trenches. Today we're going to be in Proverbs chapter 15, verse 3. If the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, then our verse for today certainly reminds us of a truth that will reinforce and in some way help us understand what it means to live in the fear, awe, and reverence of God. It describes an attribute of God, his omnipresence. Omnipresence simply means that God is everywhere. There's no place where God is not in his fullness. Let me give you some verses to highlight this. Job 31:4, does not he see my ways and number all my steps? Job 34:21, for his eyes are on the ways of a man, and he sees all his steps. Psalm 33:13-15, the Lord looks down from heaven, he sees all the children of man. From where he sits enthroned, he looks out on all the inhabitants of the earth. He who fashions the hearts of them all and observes all their deeds. Hebrews 4:13, no creature is hidden from his sight, but all are naked and exposed to the eyes of him to whom we must give an account. And our verse for today, Proverbs 15:3, says, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on the evil and the good. Now just stop for a minute and ask yourself, does this truth comfort you or intimidate you? These verses, as many others do, teach us that God is present in his fullness everywhere. But he's not just there as a casual observer. He's there watching. His eye is on us. You ever had your mom say when you were little, I got my eye on you? Well, God has his eye on us, every one of us. He sees everything we do, and he's there not just watching, but determining things, evaluating actions, watching the evil and the good. He knows not just the deeds, he knows the motivations of the heart of every man, woman, and child. And whether we see this as a good thing or a bad thing may tell us something about the condition of our hearts and how we think. The fact that the shepherd's eyes are always on his sheep should give them comfort and peace and a sense of security. The God's sheep are never out of his sight. That should be a precious truth to all those who live their lives to please the shepherd. But for those who think God only sees them in church, this is a truth they do not rejoice in. It's a very bad thing to them. They find no true comfort in the fact that God's eyes are everywhere, that he knows the thoughts and the intents of their heart, makes them mad. It means there's nowhere for me to hide. There's no excuses I can fall back on. It's like a radar camera posted on a freeway, a speed trap if you want to call it. If you're prone to speeding, you think it's unfair to have a camera there all the time. You want to be able to spot the cop car, to slow down in time, and you want to be able to speed without consequences. You want wiggle room, someone to come to your window so you can talk out of it, and you can rationalize, you can beg, you can give them their excuses. We want to sin with the prospect of avoiding the consequences. But this verse shatters that hope. There's nowhere we can hide from God. He knows what we do in secret. He knows who we really are. And that's bad news for those who think they can hide their actions in their hearts from God. He knows if we're sincere or just pretending. But for those who know God and love God, he also sees that cup of cold water that we give. No one else may have seen it, but God did. And this is a wonderful truth. It means if we are living our lives to please God, we don't have to put on a show, like the Pharisees did when they fasted, when they prayed, and when they gave. God sees us. So when we do those things, we don't need to make a big spectacle of it. We're not doing it to impress our peers, but to please our Heavenly Father who sees everything we do. We ultimately live for an audience of one, God. Everything we do, he sees. He knows our way. He's there. He sees us. He knows what's going on in our lives. And he knows our hearts. 2 Chronicles 16:9 says, for the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth, to give strong support to those whose heart is blameless towards him. What a great verse. Here's a quote. For those of us who know Christ, God's omniscience no longer means certain judgment for our sin. God knows every sin we've ever committed was placed on his Son, Jesus Christ, on the cross because he put it there. It means that God knows every struggle that we face, every trial and every temptation. It means that we never have to face the difficulties of life alone. For the believer, the fact that God knows everything is glorious. There's nothing that can happen to us that can keep us from his protecting hand. The God who knows everything and sees everything is also the God who protects his children. May we trust him and lean on the strength of our great God." End quote. The fact that the shepherd never takes his eyes off his sheep is wonderful news. It means the sheep can rest. They can lie down in green pastures. They can sleep. They can trust him in the valley of the shadow of death. For he is with us. And the eyes of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on the evil and the good. God has his eye on you, and may that bring you great comfort today as you live for him in the trenches of life to the glory of God and the good of others. God bless.